Hello, friends. This is Matt McQueenie of the Mix Minus Podcast. On today's edition, we are joined by Tim Capstraw, the radio color analyst for the Brooklyn Nets and former head basketball coach at Wagner College for 10 seasons. I was always a fan of the Capper since he came onto the Nets radio broadcast in 2002, but it was when I worked with him with the Nets in 2007 and 08 that I got the chance to know him as a friend. On the road with the team in my second season, he and the other members of the traveling party were extremely kind and inviting to a 25-year-old kid, making sure to include me in all the off-night dinners and outings. It was something I will never forget. Tim comes on the show today to talk about the 2017 NBA Finals, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors, LeBron, Steph, a little Jason Kidd from our past time, his coaching and broadcasting career, and much more. Capstraw also has some camps you might be interested in for your kids. His Wayne PAL camp in Wayne, New Jersey, our 4 weekly sessions each summer. His girls' camp at the Island Garden in West Hempstead, New York, is 2 sessions, one in the middle of July and the other in the middle of August. Lastly, he and radio partner Chris Carino also host a sports broadcasting camp at the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center at Montclair State University, and that's in late July. So again, I thank Tim Capstraw for coming on. It was a great discussion. Let's jump into it right now. Cool. Well, Matt McQueenie Mix Minus Podcast here with old good friend. Well, not old. You're a good old former friend or old friend, Tim Capstraw, the old Wagner coach and the current going on what, like 17, 15 years, the Nets announcer.
15. This will be my 16th year.
That is amazing. And you always bring great analysis to what you do. You do the radio call, which is a whole skill unto itself. But I had the chance when I worked at the Nets, I intersected with you about 10 years ago, and I got the chance to go on the road. And one of the funniest stories where the two of us were involved, I don't know if you remember this, it had to do with Cleveland as well. We were in Cleveland, and it was an off night, so we went bowling at the time. It was a great bowling alley, and it was one of the most fun nights because Chris Carino would get on the call and he would do the play-by-play of all the bowlers. And it was a cold night, I think in December or January, as it always is in Cleveland. And we were walking out, getting our coats, and I had my coat check, and they said, "Oh, this is your coat." And I said, "No, this isn't my coat. It kind of looks like it." And I remember you said, "Just put it on. We'll figure it out. And I went, "Okay." And I was like, "Oh man, where's my coat? I don't know what's going on." And I put it on, and I'm looking through it, and I just feel kind of uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on. And you're really supportive. You were extremely supportive. You're like, "We'll figure it out. We'll get it done." And then I'd say probably 15, 20 minutes later, all of a sudden, Tim Capstraw goes, "This isn't my coat." And you had my coat, I had yours, so everything was figured out.
Well, you know what? I'm sure maybe a couple adult beverages were involved in my ability to recognize what was going on right there. It's bowling. We have a little bowling tournament we've had over the years a few times when we do go to Cleveland. It's a little, alley's about 3 blocks away. It's always a fun night. We don't do it as much, but I do remember that. I remember having the wrong jacket. It was you were saying, I said, "Oh, that was Matt's jacket." That's right. But yes, probably a beverage or two might have been involved, but I'm not sure. Yeah,
and like my favorite part too is I remember looking in I had my hands in the pockets. I pulled out, and I'm like, "What the heck? There's a receipt for like 10 things of cookies." I'm like, and you go, "Yeah, that's weird. Who would get all these cookies?" I don't know.
That was me.
Yeah, it was you. That was classic. Man. Those were great times, and you're still out there. Great. I can't imagine what it's like with a growing family and all that. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but there must be times where it's like, "Oh man, another road trip."
Well, no, it can be. You get tired, a little bit. It's hard to pack your bags all the time and be heading out, especially if you're missing kids' events, and it can be tiring. But all in all, I mean, anytime you're working in the NBA, you're calling basketball games. I've done it for 15 years, and I still feel like the luckiest guy around. I didn't have an NBA background, so the fact that they allow me to do this and has been I could not be any luckier. That's can't think of a better way to say it. Just lucky and fortunate, and really enjoy it.
No, 100% can't deny that. Now, Funny that happened in Cleveland because now we're, of course, heading into this trilogy finals between the Cavaliers and the Warriors. I think everyone can't wait. There's sort of been a bated breath to much of the season because we kind of knew where we were headed. Kind of the way I feel like in the college football season, everyone was waiting for Alabama to play Clemson again. And so a lot of the storylines leading up to it kind of take a back seat. But
Right.
I'm having a really hard time making a judgment on this series. My mind says Warriors easy. You're seeing a lot of that from people with the back and forth with this interminable length, Super Bowl-like length before the thing gets started. But I feel very uneasy about what I saw in last year's finals. You know, basically both teams were 3-1, and Cleveland has the recency bias. But as someone who's seen these teams on the floor and on TV for the playoffs, what are you feeling about this matchup going into it?
Well, I'm a little bit like you. You know, like I thought. The more I think about it, I think early on my initial impression is I don't know that anybody can really compete with Golden State. I just didn't feel like that. But as time goes on and you think about it and you evaluate, you start to think, well, how could Golden State have issues? How could they have problems? How can this be competitive? And how can you say LeBron James is possibly arguably, if he wins a couple more championships or whatever, the argument about him and Michael Jordan right now has been going on or discussing, and not say that they have a legitimate chance. I'm a lot like you. I do agree that the pundits or the people that are making these predictions are certainly with Golden State, and Golden State probably would have won it last year. At Draymond Green stayed on the floor, and they had Kevin Durant. But there's something about Cleveland. There's something about LeBron James. There's something about Kyrie Irving who might be able to take it to a whole nother level. Kevin Love seems more engaged and confident in knowing his role, and he's making all these shots that I just, I'm like you. I think it's going to be a good series. I understand why Golden State is favored, but I still think that Cleveland has a chance in this one.
Yeah, it's really going to be something. It's funny you brought up the whole thing where people are talking about, which I feel like is just beaten over the head, especially this year with the Michael Jordan comparisons. As somebody who saw up close the dominance of this guy, I have weirdly felt, especially in this playoffs, that LeBron almost feels more to me like Shaq. Obviously, they're different positions completely, but in the sense of his overwhelming physicality over the game, and when he's engaged, the opponent almost cowers unconsciously.
Oh no! I saw that the other. I heard people say, well, we've always said Magic Johnson, more like Magic Johnson at times because he's such an elite player. Obviously, Michael Jordan, and then Shaq because of his physicality has come up recently, and I've heard that. And I said, boy, that's brilliant because sometimes when he's going to the basket and people remember you used to try to foul Shaq.
Yeah, you'd have like four. You'd have four big guys just on your roster.
On his arm, and you wouldn't know how to officiate Shaq because he would get pounded going to the basket. Yet he didn't flinch. So was that a foul or wasn't a foul? I feel there's a little bit of that with LeBron. I think that the unique thing, though, in the discussion that made Jordan so unbelievable was his will and his mind and his ability to just, that refuse to lose mentality. We saw it with Jason Kidd, how he could will a team and himself and others would follow. I think Jordan still has that, but boy, LeBron is gaining steam because you think about going to the finals as many times as he has, 7 in a row right now. And then you start reviewing the teammates that he had with him going there. You're saying, that's a heck of an accomplishment, and I think the next few years it's only going to be, more talked about and the comparison. And, it's kind of unfair. I don't usually come out with clever quotes, and where I sound relatively intelligent. But this year during a broadcast, I think something came up maybe it was about Michael Jordan and LeBron or somebody else, and I referred to Teddy Roosevelt quote that was, comparison is the thief of joy. And I feel like that's a little bit of what's going on right now. But let LeBron James just enjoy being a great player. Don't take away because you're comparing him to someone else. So I made that statement, and I almost had to drop the mic because it's one of the few times I sounded intelligent and profound, and I went with it. And Karina looked at me like I lost my mind that could come out of my mouth. But comparison is the thief of joy is kind of what comes to mind when I think everybody talking about these two.
I like that one. That's really good with coming with the
not
the
like
academics.
me either. You know me well. Who am I to come up with something relatively intelligent?
No, you have good colloquialisms. Though I always loved. I still use it.
Yeah.
Don't be a hero.
Don't be. Oh, yeah. Don't be a hero. Everybody, right?
I always loved that one.
Well, for older people, they know the song "Billy, Don't Be a Hero," and so when guys are trying to be too much on the floor and they try to do too much, you'll be like. Hey, Kyle, don't be a hero. Hey, different guys. So it's a little bit that, but you got to kind of watch it too, because it's a reference to, a guy coming home from the war and all that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to get in trouble or something like that. So I got to be careful. You always got to be careful. You always got to think, when in doubt, you got to leave it out sometimes. But I've been, don't be a hero is one of those ones I go with.
Well, I always think it's funny the first time when I got to go on the road and Jim Spinarkle was out there with us, and I went up to him, great guy, and I said, my favorite thing with you, and I didn't make fun of it. It was in good spirits, but I said, I always love go for the quick two. That was always his go-to. I loved. And I think the NBA's changed a lot now, where it's like people are like, I don't know if I do that anymore, even. But
yeah, Jimmy Smart, talk about like one of the great people of all time, and just he's been so good and so solid and so respected for such a long time. So you're right. Late in the game, he goes for the quick two. But you're right. The game has evolved, right? And I think that's what's going to come up in the finals. The game isn't played the same way as it was played in the 80s. It's the three ball is everything, and both teams embrace it and love it. And it can be a difference. It will make a difference in probably every game. Which team gets them, which team can make them, and which team could defend them.
Absolutely. And, you brought up the 7 straight finals for LeBron James. I don't care what conference you're in, what year you're in. That is astounding. Right. Isn't it amazing that it was 10 years ago when you and I were in the Meadowlands watching LeBron James lead his Cavaliers to that first finals, which would make it 8 and 10 years? I mean, isn't that crazy when you think back how long ago that feels, that series kind of kicked this off?
I wish I had his roster in front of me right now. I probably said Zydrunas Ilgauskas, but he was injured. Maybe I get like, Sasha Pavlovich,
yes. I think Larry
Bobby
Hughes.
Gibson, Larry Hughes, yes. Yep. I don't have it in front of me, but that's what makes his run so impressive. You're saying like, wow.
Daniel Marshall. People. Remember, he was the Game 6 guy. He hit like 6 threes or something on his birthday, May 18th. I remember that weird one.
That's a great call. I'm not one of these guys that can like you have one of those memories that you can the game's all I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but you're right. I remember it sort of well right now.
Drew Gooden. We got Damon Jones.
That is not
Ira Newble. David Wesley seemed to be on that team for at least a period. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
You're a sicko pulling that one out.
Well, I'm looking. Basketball Reference.
All right, okay. But anyways, all right. So, again, he did that when he was young. But he went through a phase. I forget the different, finals that he was in where he kind of mentally didn't seem like something, other issues were in his way. And you said, well, that would be what blocks him from being great. That's going to keep him. But that seems like a long time ago right now. That seems like, he has the ability. He's proven. I thought last year was the one that really got him over the hump as far as, boy, this guy is just so and it's just not about talent. He can just will a team, and he is so special that maybe those comparisons with Jordan have to begin now.
What do you think of Richard Jefferson still being around? I mean, that was a guy who made something out of a career where he came in sort of as a leaper and a guy in transition. He was sort of the defensive young stopper. And I'd say after year 2 or 3, he became, there was a point there where he was towards his end. He was like a 20-something point a game scorer. And then just how he's evolved. I mean, we forget. He was on Golden State like 4 years ago, and he was a bench player. He was traded for parts to Utah, and this guy survived, and he just seems ageless.
No, you know what it is, Richard, and you knew him pretty well because you would communicate with him. Very smart. You know what I mean? He's smart. He can be a wise guy.
Yes.
That's a nice way of saying it. He can be a wise guy, which makes him very good with the media. He'll probably have a very good media career. But I'm going to go back to last year's finals, and I think. See, Richard isn't going to be that big of this year's finals. He's not really, doesn't have quite the same role. They brought, they got Corver in there. They got Darren Williams who was helping. But this is what happens that I think everybody thinks the series turned with Draymond Green, and it did. I mean, that was getting suspended. But early in this, I forget, and again, I can't give you specific games because I'm not like you. Remember, Kevin Love has to sit out. A concussion, right? He had the concussion. Maybe 2 games after the second game, maybe the third game. Then he has to sit out a game. Well, who subs in for him? And who plays for him? First of all, when Jefferson was on the floor, when Love he was playing very well because he distributed the ball. He was a quick decision maker. He was outstanding. Then he may have started for Kevin Love, but he got all his minutes in the game that Kevin Love didn't play. And because Kevin Love didn't play that game, it felt like Kyrie Irving was released and said, I don't have to defer to it. It's my team right now with LeBron. I've got to start scoring. He starts scoring in the 30s. Richard Jefferson then keeps moving the ball quickly. He becomes a ball mover, really quick decisions. The Cavaliers prove that they can play with the Warriors. They beat them. And then after the game, and I always felt like Kevin Love always felt like an outsider with the Cavaliers. Instead of Richard Jefferson gloating to say, I got a chance to start so you can play well with me, he said, no. He said, I thought it just really stuck out to me. He said, we need Kevin Love back as soon as possible. I thought that brought Kevin Love back, like he felt like he was part of the team. I always thought he was an outsider, and yet then he came back after the concussion. I thought Richard Jefferson, with his not only game, how he played, but the way he was so smart to say that, to bring back Kevin Love and the importance of him really made a difference. And the other thing is, again, it freed up Kyrie to explode the rest of the series. He was very tentative the first 2 games where Golden State just dominated. And then the concussion led to Jefferson playing, Kyrie Irving exploding, and then there were a lot of confident players on the Cavaliers.
Yeah, that was just an amazing series where you really saw attrition really be the thing, the survival of, kind of the fittest. I mean, Draymond missing the game on his own accord, but then the Bogut being missed was a huge piece too, and it just became like surviving and advancing within a series in a way.
But everybody goes Draymond, Bogut. That's the series. I thought it began earlier.
Sure.
I thought the concussion part and Richard's play, because you brought up Richard's name.
Yes.
Remember, they won game 3. I think they won pretty big, or they gained confidence. Again, I don't have it in front of me.
Right.
But that's where things began to turn, where they felt like they could at least win. And Kyrie goes for 30 something, and because I thought for last year, anyways. And that's the difference in the Cavaliers. I don't know if they knew how all the parts fit. You always felt like Kevin Love was, saying excuse me when he was on the floor. You know what I mean? Can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? Now, playoffs right now this year, every time he gets the ball, he's certainly knocking them down from threes, over 42%, making all his threes. He's rebounding the ball. I think he's part of the, really, not a championship will do that, but it really makes a difference. That's the reason why I think this Cavalier team, I think the Golden State, obviously with Kevin Durant, you're going to be better. Yes. But I think the Cavaliers are better also.
Absolutely. I mean, in some ways, Kevin Love made the full Chris Bosh evolution, right? From the Toronto Bosh to the Miami Bosh.
Great call. Exactly. Same kind of idea. But that's not an easy evolution, and that takes time. And I just think you're kind of, you're dipping your toes in the water a little bit. Or can I do this? Can I do that? And I thought Kyrie was doing the same thing. And I think now they kind of know each other. They kind of have a good feel for each other, and they like each other. Everybody's accepted it. It's a terrific team right now.
Now, From an on-the-court coaching point of view, I think people watch these series and don't think a lot of things are happening because of how great the players are. Is there some level where that's true, where it's like you kind of the X and O's aren't as big a deal, and is coaching maybe really more the atmosphere and the creating of culture behind the scenes that allows them to do what they do on the court? Or are you seeing a lot of stuff as a former coach, as someone who watches the floor during the whole games? Are you seeing a lot of X's and O's happening?
Absolutely. I'll say that a lot more happens it's a harder game to coach for an NBA coach than a college coach by a lot, because the matchups will crush you, Matt. The players are so good in the NBA that you have to take advantage of every possible potential good matchup you have on the floor, and you have to try to hide or negate everyone on the floor. The matchups, the decisions, it's constant in the NBA, whereas in college, you oftentimes implement a system. You play the system, you practice the system, and is your system going to be good that night playing against another team that's done the same thing? That's not to say that NBA people don't have systems, but they make a lot more subtle adjustments and can take advantage of advantages much more than a college coach. So I think that's one of the underappreciated things in the NBA is the ability to, throughout a game, understand how you're going to play individuals, how you're going to play as a team, the double teaming of the ball. You don't see that quite as much in college. You don't see guys trying, because you don't get burned quite as much because of one player out there that you could just kind of either tell him to go one-on-one, or, you put him in this pick and roll, and it makes it, you got him switching, and then you can attack. So I think that's an underappreciated part. But the other parts of it are, you're right, the behind the scenes, the culture you create, the environment, all those things are of enormous importance.
Now, I think this part's not getting discussed enough just because we've taken it for granted, but it absolutely amazes me that this Warriors team, especially the pre-Durant version, won 67, 73 games. And then this year, with Durant missing a chunk and them kind of having some struggles initially when he was out, they still got to 67 wins. We're looking at a team that over 3 years has 39 losses, which is as many losses as Memphis had this year. And I think they were the 6th seed in the West. I mean, can you just explain how ridiculous that is with the travel, the conference they're in, the perimeter nature of the team? I mean, you travel, and I felt this as a 25-year-old. I was exhausted writing about the team and traveling, and they're playing, and they win an average of 69 games over 3 years.
No, I know, and I think it's really underappreciated, the job that, obviously they're really talented. There's no doubt about that. But Steve Kerr and the job he has done has been underappreciated because if everybody just sees how well the players have evolved. And I thought, yes, I think early in guys' careers like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, I thought Mark Jackson did a wonderful job of building their confidence, letting them know that they were great, could be the best shooting backcourt of all time, he was saying. But then I think Steve Kerr came in and took it to another level as far as, we're not only going to play, but we're going to play really good basketball. We're going to move without the ball. We're going to pass to each other. We're going to be very hard to guard. And I think that could be a big difference in this series, is that so much of the NBA is with the basketball, but the Golden State Warriors are more dangerous without the ball than they are with the ball. They screen, they move, they cut. And that's what makes them very incredibly effective offensively, besides their incredible talent. The other thing that is underappreciated is that Steve Kerr was not afraid to go out and find the best assistant coaches he could get in the league. Ron Adams is generally regarded as one of the best coaches in the NBA. He has been there since the start with Steve Kerr. He comes from, I think it was with Tom Thibodeau before that. Just an unbelievable. I remember just how old I am. He was an assistant at Fresno State about 3,000 years ago when I knew him, and he used to write books on defense in the 80s. So I would buy these books, and This guy, Ron Adams, was teaching me all this. So this is what I think is the difference in the teams, probably, is that Golden State can guard although LeBron is ridiculous, and I think that the Golden State will probably be able to guard the Cavaliers a little bit better than the Cavaliers are able to guard Golden State. And I think Ron Adams, over this 3-year run, and their defense and the attitude on the defensive side is just not appreciated. And you can't win like that, like you just described, 73, 67, only 39 losses in 3 years. You cannot win like that without the unbelievable consistency on the defensive end. And I think that Kerr's ability to coach and surround himself and allow his assistant coaches the freedom to just own the game on the defensive side is the reason why you had that that type of success.
Yeah, it's almost like a 90s Atlanta Braves Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, like winning autopilot pitching staff type of deal, where you just, everything is just humming on a regular season point of view.
Oh, yeah, and to be able to do that, like you said, on nights when you're tired and you're not into it, well, yeah, and then the ability to, create a bench or the reserves that could come in and have. How about, let's not forget Kerr's first year, he convinced Andre Iguodala to be a bench player, and that 100%. Was a big move. And people said, well, their slogan was strength in numbers. We're a team first attitude. Like you said before, is there decisions during the game? Sure, but the culture you develop and how that evolves and how people care for each other and want to play for each other, they've got it all covered at Golden State.
And obviously they're 12-0 through this playoffs, and people are going, will they be the first team to go 16-0? I think that's a very difficult order. And I really think that we're kind of downplaying what happened through about 3 quarters in game 1 against the Spurs. I think right there was potentially the game plan you run, and yes, they swept the Spurs, but that was a Spurs team. The wheels were falling off as that thing went. Not even to be funny about Kawhi Leonard's ankle, but that thing just, that fell apart. But I think you look at that, and maybe with the break that they had in all these series, and you're really looking at a break in this one, I could almost see, and I'll probably look dumb by tomorrow night when people are listening to this, but you could almost see the possibility of a game 1 redux there in the championship round, as you did in the conference championship round.
I'm cautious with predicting and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I'm not even allowed to make. I don't have strong predictions or anything like that. You don't. If you work for the NBA, you can't be talking about who's going to win and who's going to win a series. I just think. I can talk about why one team will play well and one team won't, and I think the Warriors have the potential to make you look really bad, because when you're really elite at both ends of the floor, you can dominate. And then the other thing is, it used to be when I was growing up, a momentum changing play was when a guy would they'd throw an alley-oop or something, and a guy would dunk the ball, and the crowd would go wild, and now you'd say, boy, they've got momentum. What's turned into momentum-changing plays now is 2 or 3 threes in a row. The game is over. Whether it be Golden State or Cleveland can do the same. It's funny how the game has evolved. Not only can they stifle you defensively, they can make you look bad, and then all of a sudden, bang, 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 with 3 different guys that could all make threes, or and then you feel like the game is over. That's what can happen. And I think that's what both teams, have to guard against each other, because that's how the game is played right now. It's so interesting. They're going to shoot over 33s a game in these games. Which team is going to make them? Who's going to be available to take them? And again, games can get out of hand, and Golden State has that potential, but so does Cleveland. That's why this matchup is going to be enjoyable. I understand why people are favoring one team, Golden State, but the way it's just, I just think it's going to be very, very enjoyable.
Absolutely. In our final 15 minutes here, and I do appreciate you coming on. It's been great talking. I wanted to kind of transition to a little bit of career, but I had one question. I felt like with all the talk of triple doubles this year, with what Russell Westbrook was, it was ridiculous what he did, not taken away, but James Harden was doing it too. It almost had the feel of like PED era baseball with the home runs for the statistic of triple doubles. But I feel also that Jason Kidd is maybe starting to fall a little bit between the cracks. I mean, maybe because of where he played when he was in his prime. I mean, it was out there in the moment. I mean, but he was doing these triple-double things, I feel like, that we were seeing this year. I mean, do you almost feel history is washing over what Kidd did a little bit? I didn't hear him brought up a lot on a national level when a lot of this stuff was happening, or were we too close to it, so we're giving too much credit? I don't know. It's hard
I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. I think we're probably close to it, and we got to witness it. But again, I thought the numbers don't do Jason Kidd justice. I think the number that does him justice is that he came into a franchise that was, I don't know how many games they won the year before he came in, but then
26, I think.
26, and he comes in and says, we're going to go 500 this year. Everybody goes, come on. Then they go way over 500, and then he transformed a franchise. When you can do that, and an individual transformed the culture of a franchise for a good 4 or 5 years, and then things tailed off or whatever. So what he was able to do, I think that's how you compare him. I think the triple doubles go to display what an unbelievable complete player it was. But again, much like we talked about even with Jordan or LeBron, it's that will. It's that look in his eyes. I think there were times when you came on the bus or he would walk on the bus and we'd be privileged to maybe going over on the bus. You know, we'd go over on the bus with the team and kind of see the look in his eyes. And it was not only that he was going to be ready, but if he was going to be ready, Jason Kidd was going to be ready, everybody else knew to be ready too. It's almost like if he happened to shave his head, everybody said, well, I remember people, he shaved his head today. Oh, he's on the early bus. Look out, guys. We'll win. Be ready to play today. Or something happened, during the game. So I think numbers, maybe people forget about him, but I don't think he'll ever or will diminish a little bit of his greatness. But I think just, again, using statistics to say what he did as a basketball player don't tell the whole story.
It's funny in some ways with his peripatetic career going from place to place as much as a great player does. It's almost reminiscent of like a college football coach, or a basketball coach where they burn out on a place, but they want to restart their culture and program and rebuild somewhere else, and they always do. He kind of brings that culture with him. And I remember when he came to the Nets, he used to say, because I'm seeing these shows now with a 2.5-year-old, he used to say, I love that show, Bob the Builder. I love the idea of going and building. And I always thought it would be cool. No player would want to do this because you want stability in your life. But I always thought it would be cool with someone like him, or even with LeBron James, whose star is almost bigger than any one team. In some ways, he's bigger than the league. I always thought it'd be an interesting idea, marketing angle, for someone who comes in the league that young to play in every city, or to play in like 15 different cities over a 15-year career, and every team gets the honor of seeing that guy transform their group for that year. You sell all the jerseys out with that guy's with that team, and then it's like, all right, where's he moving to next year? I'm going to Portland, because they all live in the same gated communities as it is. I mean, not LeBron, he has that beautiful Bath mansion or whatever, but I always thought that would be a neat thing. You could truly see how they can transform something by seeing what they do to your team, and then the affinity to the player. With that year, you have all these memories. I mean, look, it stinks for someone who has a life and they have kids and a family, but I mean, it's not that different than the NBA life. You're traveling all the time anyway. I always thought that would be kind of an interesting thing.
And doable, because it's a 5-person game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so the one individual could go there. Well, you saw that. You see that occasionally. You've seen it a little bit with, Jason Kidd example, right? But you have to sometimes, then you have to not only, you can transform the team, but as you get older, you have to transform your game. And I thought that's what happened with Kidd also, is that Jason Kidd could do everything but shoot. And he couldn't shoot it, but he would make shots late in the game when he had to. He was just that kind of winner. But that was a weakness in his game. So what does he do? He goes and he hires they have a shooting coach, and he listens and he trains, and he gets later on in his career, gets about 4 extra years of good basketball, because he's able to then be one of the all-time leading 3-point shooters.
Yeah, I think he retired at 2 or 3. I mean, it's changed a little because Steph Curry's destroyed the records. But,
right.
Yeah, I think he was 2nd or 3rd when he retired. I mean, it was not ace and kid, as they say. I had the funny headline. Exactly. I had the funny headline when I was working there: where there's a Will, there's a J. I mean, it's like,
that's great.
He's he was. I mean, it was unbelievable, and I guess these oral traditions and stories just need to keep it out there, right? Because it was something.
Yeah.
It was something to behold. The final couple of things here. I was real interested career-wise. I know we would talk about this sometimes on the road and things like that, but you became a D1 head coach at 28 years old at your alma mater. I'm always interested in kind of the pivots in careers and all this. I mean, I go back to the story of you remember Jack McKinney, the old St. Joe's coach, and there's a new father in charge, and he's just like, I don't like this guy, and he fires Jack McKinney, who probably would have lived his whole life coaching at St. Joe's and been happy. But that moment in time where somebody fires him for not a great reason, he has to pivot in his career. And so he's out there at the basketball camps, and he comes across Hubie Brown, I think it was, who helped get him a assistant job at Milwaukee maybe first. And then all of a sudden he goes with Dr. Jack Ramsey to Portland. And now he's like the hot assistant on one of the greatest teams ever. And all of a sudden he's a hot commodity. And I always think it's interesting going from St. Joe's, where you were happy to be for probably your whole life, and you're now coaching the Lakers. And then, by the way, 15 games in the season, he had that terrible accident, and he had brought the crosstown coach, Paul Westhead, with him from LaSalle to be his assistant. And so that guy then takes over and then takes the Lakers to the Lakers to a championship in his hometown of Philadelphia to win a Game 6, and also picked up a guy named Pat Riley, who was Chick Hearn's assistant announcer in the next office, picked him up when you had only one assistant. And so I always thought that's just a phenomenal, fantastic story of sort of the survivor aspect of being a coach, and sort of you never know where opportunities come immediately. But so that's sort of the backstory of where I'm coming with this. What was it like at 28? You get that. Did you feel like you were on the top of the world right then?
Oh no, not necessarily. I mean, I felt like I felt like it was an unbelievable opportunity that I would not have gotten unless I went to school at Wagner College. I had happened to coach there a couple of years, and then went up to Siena, and we had really good teams at Siena. We were in the NCAA tournament. There was a coaching change. I wanted to go back, and I was very lucky. But it wasn't like I was interviewing for a bunch of jobs. I got that job because I knew everybody at the school. I knew everybody, but that was part of my interviewing process. I said to them, I didn't interview for an hour. I'm not interviewing today. I interviewed for 4 years. You know me. Am I the type of person you want? And I knew that they thought I was a good student. I was a good all around athlete, but I wasn't great. And I thought that I was able to sell it was a big deal. And it was, I remember, just for, the challenge and there were people, there was a local gentleman that was a phenomenal high school coach that I think a lot of people on Staten Island wanted to get the job. I beat him out. So a lot of people were like angry. So I wanted to prove everybody. And I did a good job for, 4 or 5 years. I turned it around. And we were pretty good. And then, it's the classic thing I could have left, but I wanted to, I also stayed. I had a good recruiting class. Then, I tell everybody, I'll be honest, when I worked incredibly hard, I was good at my job. When I didn't work so hard and I relaxed a little bit, I wasn't that good, and it comes back to bite you. So you learn that, but you also learn, and you, like you were saying, you got a lot of pivots happen in everybody's life, and I'm always telling, because I tend to have a fair amount of younger people that I have through my camps or whatever that go for jobs. I try to tell them, listen, this is your job now. You're going to have like about 10 different jobs, and you're going to have 3 different careers, and just work hard, and be ready to do it. So that's kind of, timing, being ready. Things happen. Guys, sometimes, and life works in slow motion. So you think you're not moving ahead when you're young. You think you're stuck. You're not going to be, a head coach, and you're stuck, and it just goes on and on. Well, I see that, but when you get older, you realize, no, it's just slow motion. But the guys that were really good, the guys that were the really great coaches that I knew had great careers in coaching. Guys like, guy that worked for me, you did a great interview, Jim Angles. Well, he deserves to be a great coach. You know why? Because he was going to be that. When I was coming up and coaching, Jeff Van Gundy seemed to be different than everybody else when we were at 5-star camp recruiting. He seemed to be more in tune, more alert, more. That didn't shock you that he ended up being in the NBA. So I think cream rises, and I think I think guys that make it. But again, everybody better be alert to, there's a lot of changes, adjustments, and be ready to make those moves also.
And then on the flip side, after a 10-year run, I think we all think we're way old at 38, right? I mean, you're out of that job. What was that pivot like? Because I think you've probably ended up in your really dream scenario, career, life, location. I mean, what was that pivot like? Were you really nervous there?
Yeah, except I sort of thought, I knew it was kind of coming because I had talked to, like the athletic director I was close with. Most guys lose a job and they hate the coach, they hate their boss, and they want to, they say all bad things about the boss, and the guy was out to get me. This guy, well, I worked for a guy named Walt Hamline who was very supportive and just kind of said, "Hey, Tim, do me a favor. Please win this amount of games, will you? So I don't have to." So I knew I didn't win. So I knew that, this was not going to work out. So it wasn't like a shocker, but it's hard, it's hard to go through. And then you, especially when you're coaching at a lower Division I at the time, it's not like guys that get fired in big jobs, they got like 2 years on their contract left. I'll be honest with you. I had to pay parking tickets to get my transcript. Is that amazing?
Oh my gosh.
I had about 3 or 4 months I was still going to get paid. Then I remember I had to get a transcript, so I had to pay I couldn't believe it. So it is traumatic. And what I did was I just worked. I got advice from a friend named George Thompson who said, just work, don't sit home, just work. And so I was one of these guys that was, coaching all kids and training kids and hustling. I would drive to Long Island every night. I did that for a while. And fortunately, I was doing some broadcasting, trying to get in, but it's funny how you work hard. And one of the breaks I got was in one of my training sessions out in Long Island was Mike Breen's son. So I would coach him. And then the Nets job opened up, and Chris Carino, who was a play-by, his idol was Mike Breen. And Mike Breen put in a good word. Well, Chris said, "Well, I don't really know him." He goes, "Well, you'll like him if you meet him." And they met me, and out of default, I got the job. And now it's 15 years later. I like the stat. I've never missed a game in 15 years. You know what I mean? I can't afford to have somebody Wally Pipp me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I have not missed a game. And I hope I can continue that for a long time. So again, I think you're right, though. I think I'm in my comfort zone. I was a coach. I worked hard. I did a good job for a while. Then I didn't. But I wasn't as natural a coach as I feel I am as a broadcaster. I feel like I know a lot of basketball, and I can express it in a knowledgeable, entertaining way. And I don't know that I was that great of a coach. So I was very lucky to have everything work out the way it was, the way it has.
Well, and you probably had a little bit of my final thought here before I have to run. You probably had a little bit of that Paul Westhead moment because. If I'm not mistaken, your first year you rolled right into a 49-win team who took San Antonio to 6 games and should have been 7. But you're probably sitting there in that arena in San Antonio in that game 6, going, "What the hell happened? Is there anything better than this?"
Oh, it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it that I was in the finals of the first year I was. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
I still have I remember confetti coming out of the crowd at the end of the and yet, yeah, you're right. The Nets probably should have played a game 7. They're up 15, 16 points in the second half and weren't able to pull through that game. But that was an unbelievable experience. It's the classic situation of, don't get comfortable because you never know when you're going back. And but it was wonderful. It was a challenge. And I was just trying to it takes a little while to get comfortable at your job as a broadcaster. So it was here I am. I'm still in year 1. But fortunately in basketball, you get 80 games in a regular season. So your first 20, you're shaky. Second 20, you think you're a little bit better. So you're better. But you got everybody listening to you in year 1. So you hope that, it was a great time. It was a great time for the Nets. I think the Brooklyn Nets can will take some time, but I think they got great people there working in the organization. And I think that there can be some great years ahead for the Brooklyn Nets also.
Well, that was a great listen, and this was a great listen, Tim. This was phenomenal. Because of me, I have to cut it short, but I'd love to do it again because I have a bunch more questions that got cut because we had a real good conversation and we talked for about 15 minutes before, which I'm happy we did. But I really appreciate you coming on.
All right, no problem, Matt. Great to see you and great to talk to you. Take care.